Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am wired eventually. Good. I'm John Hurst, Chairman of the Board of British Standards Institution, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2026 Annual General Meeting. I'd like to thank those of you who've been able to attend, and I think the several hundred people who are joining virtually also. 2026, as we will know, is a very significant year for BSI, in that we celebrate our 125th anniversary. The afternoon session of the Standards Conference will celebrate this important milestone and will be followed by a drinks reception. And I hope that as many of you as possible will be able to stay for these events. As well as our subscribing members, we also have present here today Standards Committee members, members of the BSI Board and Standards Policy and Strategy Committee, members of the BSI Group Leadership Team, and other colleagues and guests. Please let me give my personal thanks to all of you for your attendance and for the time and dedication you give supporting BSI's very important work. In addition to the formal business of the AGM allows us to update on BSI's activities and enables you to raise any questions that you may have. We'll begin with a presentation by BSI's Chief Executive, Susan Taylor-Martin, on the Group's 2025 highlights and current activities. This will be followed by a presentation by Director General of Standards Scott Steedman on BSI's work as part of the National Quality Infrastructure. After the presentations, we'll be pleased to answer questions, any questions raised in the room or via the Teams channel. After questions, we will move to the formal business of the AGM, but I'll now hand over to BSI's Chief Executive, Susan Taylor-Martin.
Thank you, John, and let me add my welcome to everyone in the room. And sorry, we've got a bit of a split audience here. I'm going to do my best to cover both patches. But on behalf of my colleagues at BSI, the Group Leadership Team, the Board, it's a pleasure to share with you our progress from 2020-25 and what we're looking forward to in the year ahead. Now, I'm going to cover, as always, BSI as a whole, and then my colleague Scott Steedman, who's our Director General of Standards, is going to talk about standards in a lot more detail. So, I'm going to cover three topics this morning, but I did want to start with just a huge thank you because all of you here with us today, all of you joining us online, your contributions, your support have been absolutely essential. We could not deliver on our purpose, impact for a fair society and a sustainable world, without all of your help. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As John mentioned, and as is inescapable from the conference today, you'll know this is our 125th anniversary year. And so I wanted to kick off with a short animation that's going to try and distill 125 years into about 125 seconds. So with that, here we go.
For centuries, every civilization measured the world its own way. A king's arm span here, a grain of barley there. Nothing fitted together. Industry costs were spiralling. It was, well, chaotic. Then, in 1901, Sir John Wolfe Barry, the engineer behind Tower Bridge, had a simple idea. What if the experts agreed on the best way to do things? They started with the railways. 75 sizes became 5. Costs fell, production sped up, and BSI was born, the world's first national standards body. 2 years later came the kite mark, that quiet symbol saying, you can trust this. By 1929, Royal Charter status, recognition that standards weren't just about industry, they were about a fairer society and a sustainable world. Through 2 world wars and a digital revolution, standards quietly kept people safe. Seatbelts, motorcycle helmets, the 3-pin plug in your wall. ISO 9001 changed how the world thinks about quality. ISO 14001, how it treats the planet. One framework adopted everywhere. Today, we work with the world. leading the first net zero standard, the first AI governance standard, standards for psychological health, for preventing modern slavery. Because standards aren't just about things, they're about people. And the people behind every standard are the experts who shape them. Tens of thousands, chairs, consumer representatives, quietly building what the world depends on. Today, 14,000 committee members across 1,500 committees carry that work forward. Volunteers giving their time, their knowledge, their judgment. For 125 years, they have turned chaos into confidence. To every one of them, thank you. BSI, building better tomorrows since 1901.
Thank you. BSI has really played a foundational role in shaping the modern world. We originated many of the core ISO standards that underpin global industry and the modern supply chain, and are now used by millions of businesses across the globe. And that's including environmental management, quality management, of course, information security, occupational health and safety. And today, our work has the most incredible breadth, from smart cities and connected devices to carbon management in infrastructure. We're addressing antimicrobial resistance, safe medical devices, renewable energy development, secure self-driving cars, as well as the safe and ethical use of AI and standards for quantum computing. And I mention that range and that important work because much as we want to celebrate the past 125 years and honor that legacy, we are very, very focused on being relevant and impactful going forward. The challenges, I think, that we face are even greater. The need for collaborative, consensus-based solutions, and that's what the standards and the quality infrastructure, the trust infrastructure really provide, has never been more acute, and never more acute in our physical and in our digital worlds. So the work is important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 2025 in terms of some of our highlights, and I can't cover everything, so I'm just kind of trying to pick out some of the really important things from last year. It was a year of continued momentum and impact delivery. Scott is going to talk in a lot more detail about what happened from a standards perspective, but I would just like to underscore some of the very important work that we are doing with the UK government, turning policy into action. And I think about, for example, the work we've done with DEFRA on nature investment standards, the Bridge AI programme that we did with Innovate UK, which is all about making sure that UK businesses are using AI in a safe and ethical way. Now, one of the aspects that's very unusual, I should say, about, not unique, but it is unusual among national standards bodies, is the fact that we also support organisations using standards day in, day out. We supported 74,000 organisations globally last year in terms of training, assurance, certification, as well as advisory services and internal audit and supplier audit support. That included ensuring 20,000 organisations to ISO 9001, the quality management standard, certifying nearly 5,000 medical device companies to ISO 13485. That's the medical device quality standard. Super, super important in terms of bringing innovative medical technology to market safely. We lead the world in the certification of ISO 27001, which is for information security, and obviously we want to expand that leadership into the world of AI with the new management system 42001, and we're advancing our preparations to become a notified body for the safe and ethical use of AI under the EU AI Act as well. So lots of great work happening there. From a performance perspective, I think it was a very resilient performance in 2025, and most important from my perspective was we had record client satisfaction scores. We were up 2.3% to 74.3% highly satisfied. Now, that is the result of incredible work from our colleagues kind of across the organisation really coming together to make that happen. So fantastic. We've also kind of focused on colleague experience and engagement and building a diverse team. We know how important that is to delivering on that performance and that client satisfaction. We've made very good progress last year on our own environmental sustainability ambitions. We reduced our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 31% and our comparable Scope 3 emissions by 21% over the last year. So it's a very creditable performance there. And we did that by focusing on digital service delivery, by reducing our travel and reducing our operational emissions. And then as we think about shaping the future, obviously every year is not just delivery in year, it's also thinking about how we're going to move forward. We continue to invest behind our next generation of tech-enabled services and solutions and our digital platforms, and that includes using AI to become more efficient, obviously, but also deliver greater insight and value to clients. And we also are taking a lead in the development of smart standards, which is incredibly important. And as we heard from the speaker actually this morning, that investment in technology is worth absolutely nothing unless we're investing in the skills to use that technology. So again, a very important focus for us next year. I'm going to talk a little bit about our financial performance now. And as you know, we are a purpose with profit organization. We don't have shareholders, we don't have debt financing, so our financial performance is important because it gives us the ability to fund our purpose, invest behind our technology, our product, our services, our skills, etc., so that we can continue to deliver value and impact for our clients and stakeholders. You will have access to the annual report, so I'm not going to go into enormous detail here, but a couple of key points that summarize our performance. Despite some quite challenging kind of geopolitical and trading and regulatory environments, we delivered a very robust trading performance. Now, our revenue declined 1% at reported rates, but if we strip out the effect of foreign exchange, actually on a constant currency basis, we grew a percentage point. The thing that sort of suppressed that top-line growth was our training and our consulting businesses, which are much more discretionary in nature, were under some pressure just because of the economic headwinds that we faced last year. And in addition to that, we did sell part of our consulting business, a business called Digital Trust Consulting. We believe that the DTC team, Digital Trust Consulting, and their clients are going to be better served as part of an organization really focused on IT and cybersecurity risk management and compliance, which is what that business did. And the other thing that I should mention is, and as we were expecting, the slowing of the transition from the EU Medical Device Directive to the EU Medical Device Regulation, which had really kind of spurred our growth in our regulatory services business, that kind of came off, and therefore that affected our top-line growth for regulatory services. However, given the really good work that we've done to standardize and simplify how we work, with very effective cost control, you'll see that our underlying operating profit actually increased 5% to 60.7 million. And that improvement was after continued investment in the digital transformation of BSI. And as I mentioned before, that's digitizing both our operational platforms as well as the services that we are delivering to clients, investing in our technology function and building out our AI capabilities. We continue to operate with a very strong balance sheet, providing capacity to invest and deliver our purpose-led strategy. And in the third chart, you'll see there that our net assets increased by 10% to 407.9 million, driven by a focus on working capital and particularly improved debtor days. If I split down that revenue by division, just to give you a sense of that, you can see I'm starting on the top left there with our Knowledge Solutions team, which is where we provide our standards and our standards services. Last year, we grew by 3% in terms of our revenue. That was really underpinned by very strong demand for standard subscription services. Our assurance services business delivered again steady growth of 3%, delivering both volume and rate improvements in system certification and also in our internal and supplier audit. That was somewhat offset, however, by tougher trading conditions for our training business, as I mentioned. On a constant currency basis, the consulting services business declined 13%, and that was driven by the fact that we sold part of that business, Digital Trust Consulting, and we had market softness impacting the demand in our environmental health and safety advisory services. Now, that was offset, interestingly, within consulting by a very strong year, as you can imagine, in supply chain and in sustainability. So when we look at the performance of that division, excluding the business that we sold, Digital Trust Consulting, revenue only declined 1%. And then, as expected, our regulatory services business was broadly flat, following the normalization of activity from a regulation perspective. There was continued demand in our AI services, despite ongoing regulatory delays in Europe in terms of the EU AI Act. But overall, I think the key message is a very resilient performance against a backdrop of pretty challenging conditions. So, looking ahead, it was interesting, I was looking at the script for this meeting last year, and I said the following, that 25 was shaping up to be a year of even greater uncertainty than we faced in 2024, and it was. And this year, I'm going to say that 2026 is shaping up to be a year of even greater uncertainty than 2025. So we've got something of a theme going there. No question that we continue to deal with a set of evolving challenges that are affecting economic conditions, regulatory environments, and the markets, clients, and stakeholders we serve. And that's true both here in the UK and also globally. That said, I'm very optimistic about the resilience of our organisation and our potential to continue the momentum and deliver positive impact, working in partnership, clearly, with our clients, our stakeholders, all of you in the room, and all of you on the call. I'm not going to speak to every bullet on the slide, but there are just 3 themes that I really want to kind of bring out. The first is, and I know Scott is going to mention this too, it is interesting that in these challenging times, particularly with this kind of geopolitical tension, the world of international standards is a very stable platform to convene, collaborate, and make progress on really big global issues, whether that's the safe and ethical use of AI, which is clearly top of mind for many, or whether it's addressing the realities of climate change. The world isn't getting any less complicated, and risk management, supply chain resilience, managing our growing digital exposures, navigating this constantly evolving regulatory environment, all of that absolutely underpins the demand for standards, for training, for assurance, for certification. So we're going to continue to mobilise our expertise and convening power across the 4 domains that we really focus on, and those are quality, health, safety and well-being, sustainability and digital trust. Second kind of key point is you'll see dotted across this slide, highlight technology, AI, digital. We are continuing to invest very heavily in technology and data to become deeply digital, because that is absolutely at the foundation of our next generation tech-enabled services, including smart standards, absolutely. And it is a critical foundation for any modern company, and BSI is no exception. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we can't do any of this without building an engaged and high-performing organisation. So that continues to be something that the board, the group leadership team, leadership across our organisation is very, very focused on. It's incredibly important. So with that, thank you. And I'm going to pass over now to Scott Steedman, our Director General Standards.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Susan, for that inspiring words. I want to add my thank you to our committee members, our chairs, our regulators, our officials, our academics, and our colleagues, our partners, for all of that incredible work, 125 years of meetings, papers, consensus building, the idea that by sitting together, following a process, people could self-organize a solution and then use it to deliver change for the better. And in case you're looking for yourself in this picture, I thought I'd just show you what BSI offices used to look like in 1972, here with ISO TC42 on photography meeting, and then on the right, more recently, committee members supporting European standardization in Sensenelec, a bit more diverse, a bit more technology perhaps. A democratic process, though, agreeing what good looks like, has really underpinned the economic transformation of the 20th century, and now we're looking deep into the 21st century. I'm going to talk more about that this afternoon if you're in the room. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much indeed from me. And if you thought standards were a good idea back then I can assure you that the role of standards in conformity assessment has never been more important. As the World Economic Forum said to us at their headquarters, their very smart headquarters in Geneva in February, standards are seen as the only platform where countries can continue to hold multilateral conversations. Just dwell on that for a minute, the importance of the work that you are doing, sustaining a global conversation on what good looks like. Multilateral, plurilateral, minilateral. Countries around the world, developing and developed, increasingly see what we do as part of the critical national infrastructure for growth, for trade, the basis of the EU single market, the Commonwealth, ASEAN countries, China. All of these countries are pivoting to realize the importance of seeing the national infrastructure, quality infrastructure, trust infrastructure, we call it, as a system for delivering safety, quality, performance, trade, innovation, sustainable development. And as new technologies emerge, supply chains flex, and digital trade threatens to swamp our historic systems of market trust, demand is really growing for the solutions we can co-create to deliver trusted products, services, and lean regulation. Whilst we're not yet running the country, we have got a lot closer to support policymakers, government ministers, regulators address their priorities in trade and innovation, net zero, industrial and digital strategies. We were quoted this morning, thanks to the team on the government website, in relation to the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Gulf Trade Agreement signed and announced today by the Prime Minister. Last year, we saw a step change, I would say, in the breadth and depth of interest in our activities and how they can accelerate positive outcomes for productivity, for soft power, for sustainable development, not only in Westminster, but in the devolved nations, the administrations, and in Parliament, where we now have several parliamentary champions. Lots of excellent work going on in the regions and around the United Kingdom. The digital trade revolution has brought a really renewed interest in our role in the quality infrastructure, or perhaps I'd call it the market trust infrastructure. And that's precisely because of this deluge of activities, products that consumers are consuming online and online products and services, where historically quality infrastructure functions, QI functions, have operated separately. Now we're really pushing for more alignment in what we do and how we do it. A lot of that here in the UK, working with our colleagues in UCAS, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, NPL, the National Metrology Institute, and with the trading standards community, a really, really important part of the system, the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, and of course the Scottish Trading Standards, who are here today if you want to meet them. We're working more closely with the TIC Council through Susan, who sits on the TIC Council, Testing, Inspection and Certification. And from this year, we've taken on the chair of the European Quality Infrastructure Network, which is trying to develop a coordinated position at a European level that will include the UK voice. Led by Anne Hayes and her excellent team, our pioneering spirit in standards development is recognised globally. And last year, we saw great progress in many emerging areas. Our investment in the net zero guidelines following COP26 in Glasgow has led directly to the world's first certifiable net zero standard, ISO 14060, which will be published next year. And in parallel, on the back of that, very, very important piece of work on sustainable finance transition planning, ISO 32212, which will be launched here at Mansion House in June for consultation. And I think the work that Susan mentioned around nature investment standards is absolutely a breakthrough in an area which desperately needed alignment and coordination. A competence hub for building safety and PAS 2000 safe products to market in the built environment are really, really important developments in the last year. The global impact of ISO 42001 AI management continues to grow steadily, while different jurisdictions around the world blow hot and cold on AI regulation. That constant of the standards landscape continues. New areas benefit from the stakeholder-led processes we bring, like suicide awareness and inclusive PPE. And we continue to innovate our processes, I would say faster than any other standards body in the world, through PAS, of course you know, Flex, and now Pathway. With the growing geopolitical interest in standards has come politicization and even weaponization of standards in trade negotiations, and we've had direct experience of that in the last 6 months. Led by Peter Sissons and the trade team, our work at policy level in the international system is vital to securing not only the UK position, but frankly common sense outcomes for all nations. For example, in how our shaping of the smart standards agenda, working with our peers and partners in ISO, the IEC, and at European level to ensure no country left behind. We're really delighted that our Commonwealth Standards Network, which we launched at CHOGM in 2018, has continued to grow and will move into its next delivery phase shortly with FCDO funding. With global standards development going online by default, the opportunity for the great levelling up is here. Our investments in digital transformation of standards is really starting to become visible now as we move from the research and development years, the excellent work we've done, Julie Gordon sitting here, to productization, delivery of digital content with metadata attached. What I like to think of as a Lego brick model of standards fragmented into content, validated by experts in our committees through new agreed processes and delivered directly into business workflows. I've been co-chairing with the DIN Chief Executive, Christoph Winterhalter, the ISO-IEC Joint Steering Committee on SMART, while David Bell has worked tirelessly on the business models. We will deliver faster processes, more democratization, better usability, and AI tools to enable the heavy lifting. So in conclusion, I would say 2025 was another roller coaster of a year in so many ways, but a fitting launchpad for our 125 years of impact and 75 years of consumer participation. Here, some of us are in Speaker's House in November last year for the launch of Suicide in the Workplace, demonstrating the extraordinary potential that we have as a platform for society to deliver better practices. We are supporting businesses of all sizes, including SMEs, micro-enterprises, to accelerate innovation, boost trade, and strengthen productivity and well-being in the workplace. Our commitment from the board, from me personally, is to ensure that BSI remains relevant, authoritative, and future-focused, fit to serve industry, government, society, and you for the next 125 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan and Scott. We're now able to take any questions you might have. For those of you in the room, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. And do please state your name and organisation when asking a question. I'll read out questions received via Teams, which will appear on this monitor, by which my colleagues at the back control me with their foot. I can reveal, actually, just out of interest, there are over 650 people online participating in this meeting, which is quite remarkable. It says, what did COVID ever do for us? So due to time, if this becomes an issue, I might have to stop the questions. But if I can't take all the questions, do try and capture one of our board members sitting here down the front, GLT members, over lunch, and we'll try and make sure that we take those into account. So, no questions online at the moment. The floor is open for you in the room. There is a microphone on its way.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Scott. Very interesting. I actually read the annual report and accounts as well, which is, you know, I don't know why.
And it deserves a round of applause, I think.
Yeah. But my question, I came up with loads, but I think my main question is really around SMART, which is the latest iteration of digital transformation. I mean, we've been talking about it. 1990s, I think, was the first ISO project. I might be wrong, but I think so. I read about SMART, I've seen presentations, it seems to me it's being looked at as a catch every standard system, that every standard will be digitally transformed. I actually am not sure that that's necessary. I think there's a whole tranche of standards that just do not justify that and are actually more useful as documents that you read. We could improve the PDFs, obviously, because PDFs can always be improved. But what I'd like to know is how are you going to identify digital projects that can realistically be funded, governed, and evaluated?
May I take that?
Yeah,
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Andrea, thank you very much for that question. A really important place to start on SMART is, frankly, SMART's a code word. And it's an internal kind of project word, and we're going to move on from that. SMART is not about digitizing standards and transitioning from paper PDF to something online. It's not about that at all. The concept of the standard will continue in perpetuity as long as people want them. There will be a rendering that is a copy that you can look at and read as a human. But what we know is that industry is looking for metadata attached to save time and effort, to be able to ingest and consume the information in the standard directly into their machines. So that's a really important layer that we're adding on top. And there will be further layers that become more and more innovative as the years go by. But you're absolutely right that in the first place, we have a transition period where we have a lot of massive catalog of information, and we are trying to prioritize a number of standards that stakeholders, industry want urgently, and they will be some of the more obvious work in manufacturing, specifications, and so on. And trials have already been running in the last 18 months in Scandinavia, where industry's been using smartified, if I use that clunky word, standards to see what it feels like. And we also know that customers of BSI are already doing that with their own AI tools. So a lot of people are experimenting with how you can use technology to get at the information in a standard. But rest assured that we are not going to lose the potential for people to read or look at standards. And we get that message loud and clear from the developing countries as well. That will continue. This is about a layer on top of the existing structure.
Further questions in the room? I can't see where. Ah, sorry, yes. You blended it, you got a blue shirt, you blended into the chairs. I'm sorry about that.
Apologies. Just following on from the previous question.
Could you just say your name and organisation if that was helpful? Thank you.
Apologies. Alan Bale from Heartstream, medical device supplier. In terms of following on from the previous question and using SMART or assisting getting product to market quicker, medical devices, etc. Do you guys have any or are developing tools to have cross-referencing or linking between standards that are required? So obviously there are ones that are military standards or RTCA. I'll set those aside. But if we look at sort of the BS or ENs, how we can quickly identify similarities or cross-references in particular in each of those standards, whereby, as an example, vibration testing in one standard will have a whole series of requirements, and another standard will have similar, but up until now, it's a case of reading through each of those and developing our own way of identifying that. Is there something that you guys are doing as a tool for that?
We anticipate that by unlocking the content and adding the metadata as I've described, we'll see a massive innovation in tools that come forward from the market to enable precisely that kind of comparison to go on. That will happen at a corporate level. It may well happen at an institutional level. I think it's very likely that we'll move into an era of shared digital infrastructure, where a lot of the major standards organizations in the world, not just in the formal ISO IC system, Sensenelec, ETSI, but also in the SDO system, they will partner up around the data architecture. So the interoperability of the content will become much easier for technology providers to provide solutions for. So I anticipate that's absolutely going to happen.
Anybody else? Oh, yes, one over the table here. I'm glad we're spreading the questions around the room. It makes my morning work out.
Lee Turtle from Pat IT, standards user. The systems we've just been discussing, is there a plan to go app-based with it? Because we're finding increasing issues when we're looking at standards online. It's incredibly slow for us looking on the phone for our guys on the ground, looking and researching a particular part of that standard. Is there an app that might be...
I've always wanted an app.
Or we could get Neil to do it.
Well, we're listening to the market is the answer to that, and our tech teams are developing products to serve all your needs. But I have been asking for an app for a long time, so I look forward to that.
So, Neil, do you want to say something? Let's get you a microphone, then you can introduce yourself and answer the question a bit more fully.
Hi everyone, I'm Neil Musk. I look after the standards publishing part of the business. So to answer both questions actually, yeah, so next year in our release of the new knowledge version platform, we'll be looking, there's a tool specifically around cross-referencing standards to regulation. And in terms of the app question, yeah, absolutely, that's in the planned release. If not, it probably won't be this year, probably be next year, but that is the plan. So it'd be good to talk to you about use cases that would be really useful.
To warn you that that's now put the fear of God into all my colleagues here, because they now know I'm going to pass them a question if it comes up. We have a question online. What is BSI doing to influence governments other than the UK?
Oh.
I think it's... You can choose who does that.
Well, thank you for that question. What is BSI doing to influence governments other than the UK? Well, if I started at the European level, we are full members of Sensenelec, deeply involved and full members of ETSI. So the European standardization system, we continue to participate very heavily in, partnering very closely bilaterally with all those countries. In fact, we're all off to Cyprus very shortly for the European meeting, but particularly closely with France, Germany, Sweden, Spain, Italy, and others around that. So what we're trying to do there is to help governments globally use standards in the most effective way that will enable trade and innovation. We have the Commonwealth Standards Network to help provide support and advice and consultation to governments across the Commonwealth about how you use standards and regulation more effectively. And then we have a lot of direct bilateral relations that I mentioned Peter Sissons earlier. Peter Sissons leads on that, the international relationships with other national standards bodies around the world, the majority of which, I mean, all are appointed by governments, are in government and often in central government. So being able to talk to them about how we want to see standards being used as a common currency around the world is very much on our agenda. We spend a lot of time in British High Commissions around the world working with them and helping them on what's called regulatory diplomacy.
Good. There is another question online which I'll read out. What has BSI done for the development of quantum computing standards? Is there anything I can look at on the website? And it's from somebody called Anon.
I'm sure it's on the website, but I'm not going to point you to the link. We were named with NPL, National Metrology Institute, in the UK's government quantum strategy a few years ago, and we set off to do our part of that by lobbying other countries to create a new international joint technical committee on quantum computing, quantum technologies, I should say more carefully. And of course, massive interest in that from the US and from China, but the BSI policy team worked hard, and there were 2 votes, and we voted first to create a new joint technical committee globally, and secondly that the UK would hold the secretariat of that, which we now do. So we're very pleased with that outcome, BSI supporting through the committee structure the Quantum Computing International Joint Technical Committee, the first that's ever happened. And there is a whole series of program of standards development work going on in quantum computing to kind of prepare for future development of products and services. A lot of it really in the terminology and foundational level right now.
Yes, the gentleman down here. There's a microphone on its way.
Hello, Alistair Ray, HPI Verification Services. We're a notified body and approved body for a number of regulations. We're told at some of our European meetings about this case that the EU Commission has been sued over not making available standards that are related to regulations and directives, and that they are planning some kind of portal to make them available online or in small pieces. That potentially is a threat, I imagine, to the delivery and costing. What is the position on BSI? Is that a threat to the income on revenue?
Well, it's a great question. And actually, yesterday, we sent our letter and proposals back to the European Commission. Being quite a sea change, the European Commission is looking at what's called Regulation 1025, which is the regulation within the EU that regulates standardization and names the 3 European standardization organizations, CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. They've been talking about whether they would bring standardization in-house or insist or require that we should make public access to all standards available. So that conversation's batted backwards and forwards. I think where we are today is that, yes, there's certainly legal challenges are continuing, and the concept of public access, which, by the way, means industry access, not just public access, it's the addressee of the law that would have a right to see a standard. That continues, but frankly, we're trying to move beyond that to say, listen, actually, we want to see standards used. We want to enable public access in a way that's pragmatic and sensible and common sense. So I think that the conversation that we're now engaged with the European Commission and also with our own government here in the UK is around how do we facilitate public access, for example, to summaries straight away, but also then to viewer platforms, which is where they are today, and then to perhaps seek other models for providing sponsored access to content in different ways at different levels. And that's the direction of travel today. But I would say we now are on a journey. We've been talking about this for a decade, but now it's actually a journey that's happening in which we will move, as we move towards more digitalization, digital standards, towards, if you like, kind of releasing in some way more easier public access, online viewing and what's not to argue there. So we'll see that happening. That will have an impact on business models, absolutely, and we're looking and working at that as carefully as we can. But the whole point is to serve industry with better standards. So.
Okay, thank you, Scott. There's another question from the rather prolific questioner, Anne On. Do you want to follow up on that?
I just wanted to follow up on that question.
Yes, let's do that first. Then we wait for the microphone and we'll be.
Yes, thank you. I'm Andrea Bedard-Smith, by the way, Chair of the British Standards Users Network. Just following up on the previous question on 1025, one of the suggestions from the EU, from the Commission actually, is that they write standards in-house, common specifications. That's going to put us in a bit of a difficult position, isn't it, should that happen, vis-a-vis our continued membership of CEN and our agreement to adopt standards, because if they're written by the Commission, how is the UK government going to feel about us using those documents? And they're not going to be consensus, they're not going to be voluntary, they're going to be a completely alien thing. What's your view? What are we going to do about it?
Well, thank you, Andrea. One of my mantras is that there is no technology without standards. It's only a question of where they're written. So the European Commission has talked about this. Actually, when you get down to it, it's much more difficult than you think to write standards, as you would all know in the room. And it's particularly difficult, I think, for the authorities to write standards. So in many ways, you say, well, listen, if people want to write technical regulations or specifications, let them do it, up to them. But if they want stakeholder-led standards with formal process and trust from industry and participation, they're going to have to use our system. We have lots of ways of making standards. And I think that's part of the conversation that we're having with the Commission, is to say, what is the future of standardization in Europe to support trade, innovation, society, welfare, net zero? What is the role and how can we improve on that? And that's a suggestion they're making. I think there will be some. I think it's going to lead on to what we call a standardization hub. We've made a proposal to create a hub in Europe for standardization, for standards, a repository that will enable digital access, if you like, to the Commission and to the authorities. But working together as a region is really, really important. And it's not just the UK that's not in the single market. There are many other countries in Europe and the European region, and new ones joining, in fact. So Sensenelec is not an EU 27 outfit, it's 35 countries now in the EU.
I think it's worth providing a bit of
system,
reassurance. Since I've been chairman of the board, this has been a constant conversation with threats and promises, all kinds going each way. And I have to compliment Scott and his team for the fantastic job they have done in making sure we navigate our way through this, even against sometimes quite dogged political interference. We're surviving and flourishing. Back to Anon. What are the next major societal challenges? What are the next major societal challenges that BSI is going to focus on? Would you like to take this, Susan?
Yeah, let me tell you. Yes, really great question. And I was thinking that the team, and I've got Jane Packer sat straight in front of me, who's the person that's been spearheading a lot of work on some of the societal kind of standards that we've been working on. And these are typically things that we will invest in as an organisation. So, for example, the net zero standard is something that started from an investment from BSI, now obviously making its way through the international system. It's going to come out this year for public review, publication next year, but also Jane responsible for the menopause standard, also the standard that came out on suicide awareness. So these are all kind of societal standards that we work on, that we make available for free for people to kind of use. And actually on the website, wonderful case studies about the kind of impact, the number of people these standards are kind of reaching is really extraordinary. I think I'd mentioned two things two things, and then a kind of I'd love to open it up for kind of for ideas. One of the things that we're working on right now at the request of the UK government is to support Sir Charlie Mayfield's Keep Britain Working review. And so there's kind of a standard that we're developing together with business, together with healthcare professionals and others, to work out how do we keep people in the workplace through kind of challenging times. So very interesting piece of work. We were delighted. We're working with 3 government departments on that piece of work. That'll be a very important standard that we co-create with everyone kind of in industry. So I think that's super, super important. That's coming out. I think another area, which is very close to one of our particular board members' hearts, who's not with us today, but is at the area of water, where that is absolutely coming to the fore. DEFRA, very interested in that, clearly from a kind of UK-specific perspective, but we think there's a lot of opportunity for standards to really shape the world of water, and the challenges that are being faced there, as you can imagine, are absolutely global. And then the only final thing that I would say is, and Scott might want to talk a little bit about this, but we've just launched something that we've called the 125 Global Impact Fund. So this is an investment that BSI is going to make into exactly standards addressing these sorts of initiatives. So we've been doing that kind of quietly, as it were, for a while, but this is really formalizing that and really making sure that we're investing in these sorts of very important standards, because we can. And we'd love to hear your views and your thoughts and input into areas that we should be exploring from that perspective.
But sadly, not now, because
Not now.
we've run out of time, and I need to move on to the formal business. Thank you so much for the questions. They've been interesting and stimulated a lot of thought, and we'll make sure that the board reflects on them appropriately. We now need to proceed to the formal business of the meeting, and I will take as read the notice of the meeting sent to all members, and the wording of the resolutions is now shown on the screen. Indeed. Voting on each resolution will be carried out by way of a poll. Poll votes received today will be added to the proxy votes already received to get the final voting position, and the results will be published on the BSI website within the next 24 hours. Before we move to the poll, there are 2 items of special business to be discussed, so I now need to hand back to Susan, who will discuss Resolution 8.
Thank you, John. So Resolution 8 proposes an increase of 3% to the fees payable to the chairman and the non-executive directors, in line with the average salary increases for BSI's UK workforce. To deliver impact today and in the future, BSI relies in no small part on the collective strength of the board and the ability of its individual directors. And in addition to their work at board and board committee meetings, our directors engage with and support the business throughout the year, playing a vital role in driving the group's performance and overseeing an organisational culture in which all of our employees can thrive and deliver BSI's purpose. Now, the board and the Remuneration Committee apply strong rigour when recommending to members any increases to the chairman and non-executive director fees, and this includes market benchmarking. And the latest benchmarking shows that the resulting fees will remain in the lower half of the FTSE 250 listed peers. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to recommend the proposed fee increases for members' approval, and I'll pass the meeting back to John.
Thank you, Susan. In addition to the opportunity for members to raise questions at the AGM, BSI bylaws also allows members to propose specific items of special business. Resolution 9 has been proposed by a member, Dr. Hugh Pratt, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Pratt with us today. And I'd ask, Dr. Pratt, I haven't asked you to speak. Thank you. Dr. Pratt, and I'd ask Scott to say a few words on this resolution, please.
Thank you, John. Those of you who attended BSI's 2025 AGM will recall that Dr. Hugh Pratt proposed a resolution at that meeting to further strengthen our processes with regard to the rules of committee membership, including how BSI investigates allegations of behaviour in committees that fall short of our requirements under BS 0. Over the last year, I've been working with the committee which oversees the work of BSI's standards committees, the Standards Policy and Strategy Committee, or SPSC, to review in detail the matters raised by Dr. Pratt at the 2025 AGM. And subsequent to the 25 AGM, Dr. Pratt has raised a number of further matters, which include a formal request for information submitted in the last few weeks. We're in the process of reviewing this latest request, and we will share the information with Dr. Pratt as appropriate. During 2025, Deborah Harding was appointed chair of the SPSC, and I'm delighted that Deborah is here today. BSI's always had robust procedures in place to support our committees and chairs and has an ongoing dialogue with them through the BSI staff that support our committees. As part of her initial work as SPSC chair, Deborah has requested a review of committee governance arrangements to ensure they remain robust and fit for purpose. This work has included a review of arrangements for dealing with any issues, including the mechanisms for appeals by committee members, and steps have already been taken to further strengthen these arrangements. So I'd like to thank Dr. Pratt for his continued engagement, and in my role, I fully support the resolution he has proposed, which is entirely in line with BSI's collaborative work with our committee chairs and members to provide trusted, consensus-based standards.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'd also add that Dr. Pratt and I have spoken in the last few days, and I spoke to reassure him that the resolution on today's agenda has the full support of the board, and judging by the proxy votes will be carried without further ado. So I think we can actually move now to the voting on the AGM resolutions. Those of you who are here in person eligible to vote at the AGM who have not yet returned a completed proxy card should already have been given a poll card. Please raise your hand if you are a voting member and haven't yet received a polling card. I don't think it's necessary, Hugh, to be honest, because it's going to be passed. So we'll take it and enact it after that. No. Thank you. Can I get polling cards to the appropriate people who've raised their hands and don't have them? Okay, so please complete and sign the poll card and hand it over to you as you leave the room. We'll add these votes to the proxy voting already received, and the results will be posted on BSI's website within the next 24 hours. Thank you, all of you. That concludes the formal business of the AGM. Before closing, finally, I can update you regarding membership subscription rates. The board carefully considers the rationale for any proposed increase to membership subscription fees. The board has approved a 3.3% increase to subscription fees across all membership bands in line with UK inflation rates. Through this price increase, BSI will ensure the overall proposition remains as strong as possible for all members. Price rises will affect new members from June 2026 and renewals from August 2026. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I declare the 2026 AGM closed and invite you to join us for lunch. Thank you.